All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to get a little personal and also a little bit proactive as well. We're here to talk about changing the paradigm. So basically, what does that really mean? That means that the paradigm is the philosophical prism through which something is viewed, right? And so we need to push that forward, and GB Sciences wants to be the spearhead of that changing that paradigm. And it also means that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm Dr. Dominic Monaco. I've got my graduated from the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy. I've done inpatient pharmacy, outpatient pharmacy, compounding, gels, hormone replacement, troches, things like that. I also work with the Indian Health Service as well as the Tohono O'odhams as well as the White Mountain Apaches. So when I say I'm up here and I'm in it for the medicine, I am. And I actually have a bit of a personal story behind that, and I'm more than happy to get into that with you. So that being said, I have been in the cannabis industry for 12 years. I started back in 2006 when I got into pharmacy school, when I realized that I could help so many patients, right? So I've helped patients with irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, AIDS, cachexia, wasting, lupus, as well as rheumatoid arthritis. And those are all done in Arizona, so I really am in it for the patients. And to go into the personal bit about it, so at the age of 18, I was prescribed opiates. I have kyphosis. It's a genetic disorder. It's the opposite plane of scoliosis. And so at that time, I was prescribed about, I want to say, four Lortabs a day. And that was about it. By the time I got done with college and pharmacy school, I was prescribed 180 Vicodin a month, 90 cyclobenzaprine a month, 30 temazepam, and 240 tramadol. I took those for 8 years. I don't take a single one anymore. Appreciate that. So that being said, it took a lot of research, personal research as well, with my own body, trying to figure out what does and what doesn't work. I'd say right now, at the past 5 years, and I've pretty much documented most of it, it takes anywhere between 400 and 600 milligrams of THC a day to cover my pain. And that's about on average. And I haven't really matched specific terpenes yet, but I know which strains do and do not work for me. So that being said, without cannabis, I wouldn't be standing up here today. And so thank you for having me, and we're gonna go into changing that paradigm, right? So changing the philosophical prism that this is viewed through. So I had a lot of trouble with that, dealing with patients in Arizona, trying to get them to go away from the stigma, right? To get away from the taboo. And if you're already having problems with quality of life, what's it to try something else, to try, and just try to make it happen. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're in the same boat that you were, right? So we're here to try to change that. That's my personal story here. These three panelists here are gonna try to tell you about their personal stories and a lot of the challenges, right? That's the other thing is we're here to talk about, is a lot of the challenges that come along with this, right? So I'll leave it up to Brenda here. We can go down the panel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Gonzalez. I'm thrilled and blessed to be a part of a dispensary here in town. And I deal with a lot of elderly people, and they just want to change, and they've had chronic pain for forever, and they're looking for a change. And I was just telling people here that I think this is the most important conference or symposium that's going to be here in the next couple weeks, with everything going on, just with the educated people here and the voice that you will have. And I'm just very, very thankful that this was put together.
My name is Brandon Wygan. I'm Chief Compliance Officer for Nevada Organic Remedies in the Source dispensaries. Previously, I helped open the Grove dispensaries. We also had Cannabis brand. I got that off the ground and then transitioned into a role with the Source. And one of the things that attracted me to the Source was our commitment to patients. We transitioned from medical to retail, but never really lost sight of the fact that the medical patients were the ones who got us where we were and ones who really need us the most. And that's been one of our commitments, is trying to embrace and honor that community and continue to provide the medicine that they so need. Tick, if you're still in here, I think one of the things we need to work on is getting rid of a tax on medical products. I think that'd be a long, definitely deserves applause. We don't tax pharmaceuticals. If we're going to treat it as medicine and call it medicine, then tax it like medicine.
Thank you. So I'm Dr. Andrea Small Howard, the Chief Science Officer of GB Sciences. You may have already figured that out today. But at first I wasn't going to be on this panel because I thought, because I wear two hats. So on the one hand, I feel like GB Sciences is fully a part of the cannabis industry. But I also sit in an area of our company where I'm also part of the sort of science and research realm. And so I think there's like a double responsibility in where I sit, because I feel that the cannabis industry really needs to step up, and if we're going to change perception, we need to be offering products with elevated levels of consistency and standardization, easier to dose, all the things that the patients this morning were asking for. We should be providing that. And on the research side, one of the messages that came to me from Elizabeth was, I guess scientists need to talk more about what they do, because the data that we're creating will help change the perception in the minds of the public and in the minds of regulators. And so yeah, that's kind of where I said is, we need to start using both our power within the industry, and as we gather scientific data, we need to put that out there so that we can help change perception.
Okay, thank you. So for each panelist, I mean, I'm going to list about 8 different things here, and you guys can pick which one you want to take a stab at. How's that? So moving from the alternative medicine into the mainstream modicum, right? That's our big challenge here. And it presents a slew of challenges. So I'm about to list the top 8 that I came out with, and then you guys can try to address them as such. So obviously we have a lack of research material, which is what we've been talking about all day, which is due to regulations. Which has to be addressed, right? And that also leads to then the lack of statistical data to discern true therapeutic value, right? So those are all kind of 3 in tandem, but they're all in and of themselves one kind of thing, right? And then also the public stigma and taboo, which I obviously just mentioned, and Andrea did as well, and lack of agriculture standardization on a whole, not necessarily for GB Sciences, but on a whole for the industry, which what we just discussed earlier as well. Expanding accepted medical conditions in the medical states, right? That's a big problem, right? If we can't get the medicine to the patients that actually need it, and just because they're not on a certain list, that's not doing good, right? That's not good enough. And as far as on top of that, patient access, and what I think is really important, patient education, right? That's going to change a lot of this for us. So I'll let you guys take a stab at it.
First, I'll start. One of the ones that I think we've tried to do a really good job is changing the perception of what a dispensary is and what a dispensary isn't. I think when you walk into the source, you see a very different, it's a different expectation than most people walk in with. We've tried to make it very welcoming and inviting. It doesn't look like your standard head shop. It's not like you're walking into a college pot shop or a glass shop. And when you look at our employees, they represent an entire cross-section of the population. I have 21-year-old team members who love the culture of cannabis, and then I have 60 and 70-year-old grandmothers who love it because it's changed their life and it's helped bring a positive change into their own lives. And so I think that's one thing we try to do, is that represent to the community and welcome the community and say, look, this is not, it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that, is taboo. It's not, I can't believe that in 2018, I'm still hearing legislators in Utah call it the devil's medicine. It just blows my mind. And I think that's, it's prudent for us in the industry to work on changing those stereotypes and to not embrace, the old stereotypes and to try to push it forward. And that's something I'm very proud of our team and what we've accomplished. I get comments all the time of, this is not what I was expecting. It's very welcoming. Oddly enough, from the marketing side, we kind of look for, call it a soccer mom stereotype. Somebody who can come in. If I can make a soccer mom feel good about walking into our shop, then I think we're doing a good job. And if we can make that welcoming and inviting and pull away the stereotypes to that demographic, then I think we do that for the rest. And that's a target we've been trying to hit. And I think through that activity and through that initiative, we're changing the neighborhood, and we're changing people's perceptions of us. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing. So that's one thing I think we all need to look at, is how do we elevate the industry, and how do we lop off the stereotypes of the past.
And I think that's totally important, and I think we run a similar dispensary model. We do deal with a lot of elderly people, and when they first come in, they're nervous. So we've set it up as a high-end spa doctor's office, and we really try and have, I think the employees are your key. And I tell people all the time, you can teach people about cannabis, you can teach people about business, but you can't teach people to care about people. And people know the difference when they come in and they want help from you, and you're willing to give that help. And I think that's what we try and do in the dispensary, is really hire people that really want to teach and educate people on this plant. And what we try and do is we have a lot, and I'm sure a lot of the other dispensaries do also, but we try and do a lot of educational sessions during the month. We do a ladies' night and a men's night, and a lot of it, just the other night we had one, and a lot of it was people came up to me, and I make them go around the room and introduce themselves and just talk. And I get a lot of it afterwards. They'll come up and say, you know, I've never ever really gotten to talk publicly about me being involved in this industry. So I think that what we're trying to do is just educate people. And that, to me, is where all of us as an industry, if we can educate people, then they are so much more open to try it.
That's a great tip. So I loved your list, Dom. And so, but funny, education was the one I was going to kind of jump on, because while we don't have, so GB Sciences is not directly involved with dispensaries. Obviously, we sell through dispensaries, but we don't own one. So we don't have that, at least in Nevada, we don't have that direct access to patients. And actually, oddly, in Louisiana, it's the same situation. In Louisiana, we grow, we cultivate, we create products, but they're sold through pharmacies there. So, but what GB is trying to do to bridge the education gap is we've created an online portal of freely available information that's going to launch, I believe, in 6 weeks or something like that. So we'll get the word out that we're trying to take information that's vital about the endocannabinoid system, about the basics about the molecules, about basics about delivery systems, basics about, you know, just kind of the 101 stuff for patients and doctors and such, and put it on a freely available web portal. And then for folks who are either doctors or pharmacists, there'll be a click through to CMEs and CE credited courses. So that's something that GB is really committed to doing. Is true. The way that you can break stereotypes is through education, and yeah, we're committed to that too.
Awesome. Right on. So I guess one thing I would really like to hunker down on is quality control. Actually, since we have quality control up here, so how does that impact your message, right? How does quality control impact your message, and how do you get that message out to your patients?
Were you looking at me for that one?
Sure.
Quality control is important. I think one of the things our state did very well, as we heard on the last panel, is setting up testing standards. Now, I think there's some ways we could fine tune that, because I do think they are very rigorous. But we're rising to the task, and by what it gives us is the confidence that when a customer comes in, I know I'm giving them quality product. I don't have to worry about researching every single vendor that I work with and making sure that they're providing the best quality product to put on our shelves. It comes to us with testing documents. We know what we're buying, and we know what we're providing to our patients. And I think that is one of the things that we hit the nail on the head for the state. The quality control aspect, as compliance officer, operations, those two go hand in hand. It's just something that we do as a matter of course. It's built into the ethos of the company. Everybody understands what we're doing. We keep very tidy environment. We try to make sure that the product we deliver is very consistent. That's one that I'm searching for the ways to make our products more consistent. That's one of the challenges of agriculture is, I get strains that there's wobble in those strains, and I try to, we try to get as consistent as we can, but that seems to be kind of the holy grail, so to speak. And I know GB Sciences is doing a lot of work with tissue culture, which is fascinating to me. I think, for somebody who's been in the industry for 12 years, that's like light years.
Right.
I mean, the rapid pace of innovation within cannabis astounds me. It's, you blink and the entire industry has changed, and that's its own set of challenges as we try to stay on top of the newest bleeding edge science. But I love what it's doing to the industry. It's forcing innovation. It's forcing us to adapt, and that's exciting. There's never a dull day in cannabis.
For sure. Yeah, for
And
sure.
I think a lot of the patients are learning now that we have to have testing in the dispensary. So if any patient needs testing, we can give it to them. And that has helped so much, because in the beginning, and I'm sure everybody wanted the highest THC, but now they're learning there's more to that plant. And now they don't come in and ask for that. Well, what's the myrcene in that plant? So with the testing that has to be and the compliance with it, it really has helped educate them, where now they're coming in and learning more about the plant too.
Perfect, thank you. So let's delve into a little bit of regulation. So we have people from literally all over the world here tonight, and a lot of that was coordinated by Miss Andrea Small-Howard over here. So, thank you. And tell us a little bit about delving into regulations.
I love
Tell me, yeah, of course, yeah, exactly. So tell me the hurdles you've had to go over to actually get over to those people, and why, right? The federal regulations that we have here are a lot of the reasons that we have to involve all these people from around the world, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing at this point.
Right. So it's an interesting time to be doing work in cannabis. As I think that also should be another message, from this conference. And with respect to the regulations, when you are like me and you like to look at them and read them and get to know them and make them your friends, what you do is you look for those places where the regs can work to your favor. So I think I mentioned earlier that we were interested in the Louisiana market because it was a pocket where we could do a lot of research in sort of a blanket of at least their state program. And I think that there are other places, both in the U.S. and the international realm, where we find those kinds of same situations. So we're looking to exploit those places that exist that will support the kinds of research that we want to do, so that we can create the kinds of products that we want to deliver to patients.
Perfect, thank you. So I know I've had to deal with being GM and operations manager of GB Sciences TICO location here. I've had to deal with a lot of state regulatory hurdles, right? So if you two could tell me about some of the hurdles that you guys have had to jump through, so to say.
I could start. How long do we have? How much time do we have?
Right, yeah,
That's what I was gonna say.
It's, regulations are a double-edged sword. What I like about regulations is it forces good operators for the state. Again, I tip my hat to our state legislature, our senators, the bodies that helped us approve the legislation that we have in place, because I think we've done a very good job and it's being proved out. We are kind of a shining star within the cannabis realm as it comes to the U.S. And like I said, as tough as those regulations can get, they do keep out the bad operators, and they force us to be innovative, and they force us to adapt. And I remember when legislation was first put forth, there was a lot of fight against testing. And I think I'm very glad that they didn't relent on it, and we have a very rigorous testing standard. And with that, as you talked about these topics, all of those are very interrelated. With testing comes a lot of access to data, and with that data, I can start to make inferences for customers. And that's one of the nuts I'm trying to crack, just on the retail side of, can I use this testing data? Can I pull my customers to anecdotally start to figure out and fine tune what are the specific terpenes that may show up. Like, as the state regulations show, we have to display the top 3 terpenes. Well, a lot of times that's myrcene, limonene, kind of the common terpenes that you see. But I think there's probably terpenes that are punching above their weight class that show up in very small amounts that nobody's really paying attention to. But we have that data, and if I can get good information from my customers about, here, this is how this product made me feel, these are the benefits, these are the drawbacks, these are, this is the mood it put me in, or these are the ailments that it helps solve. And I can do that across a large data set. Anecdotally, I can start to provide better information and better guidance to my customers. And that's one of the things I'm really, again, kind of my holy grail is, I think most customers now, this is a new industry, and they're coming in looking for guidance, and they want information, and they're hungry to find that information. And that's one of the things as an industry we've struggled to provide, because the research isn't there. And I think that's another light year shift. Once we get research and we can start to really do, studies and provide real data, we'll see this industry vault forward. But in the interim, it's like, what can we do as operators to start to solve some of those problems?
And I think it makes the patient feel safe also. It makes them feel safe if they can come in and get the testing. They know it's been tested, and they know now what they're reading. So I think the compliance is very stressful. I had an inspection yesterday, and they come anytime, so you need to make sure that you're up on your compliance. And I think that the state has done a very good job to make sure that everybody is doing everything correctly. But I think that passes on to the consumer that they're safe.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So just to kind of wrap it up here, if I were to say basically 3 things, right? So right now I've got a public forum, right? Quality control, right? And so if we were to round out those 3 things in your auspices, what would that last one be? To try to change that paradigm, to make that ball kind of go forward, to get that to that tipping point where it just falls down the hill.
Yeah, I'd go back and say research. I think the research is the missing link there of unequivocally proving and taking away the fight that this is just a drug that people want access to. That, I mean, you go back, and I was just reading an article today, 1880s, this is in medical literature as a reliable medicine. It wasn't that long ago that it was still used as medicine. You think, I mean, alcohol is outlawed and now is here. It's the same thing that happened with cannabis. I mean, go back to the 1930s. It wasn't that long ago that it was pretty ubiquitous. And I think dispelling those stereotypes and fighting some of the paranoia is done with just hard research and data. And I think that's one of the reasons it's been Schedule 1 is we don't want that data out there. And I think the push of the attitude is certainly changing, and I think it's the wave is moving in the right direction. As I tell everyone, I think the horse is out of the barn. There's no pushing it back. Now it's just how much faster can we push this forward? I mean, there's very real benefits to this, right? There's people that need the medicine. Every day that we waste is more patients' lives affected. So I'd go back and say research is our missing link. That's the thing that I think we need as an industry to really have solid footing.
So, as a company who's invested significantly in research, I think one of the missing gaps is also education, because like a lot of folks that are involved in research, we get sort of tunnel vision about doing the research, and we forget that we have that responsibility to share the results in a way that people can understand. So I challenge all of my fellow research folks to learn to be good communicators with just every person you see on the street. I do find that I talk a lot about cannabis to Uber drivers, and they're an excellent, sounding board for figuring out the right way to phrase things. But actually, one of the inspirations for this conference today was to get people who are also on the research side talking to people from a cross section of the industry. So I hope that was obvious.
Yes.
I think education is a key, and research. And I think the more people learn, they have a voice. And you have a voice, I have a voice, and he might be able to contact people that I can't. I might be able to reach somebody that he can't. So as an industry, we all just need to take that responsibility and take that on we're learning, now we need to pass it on so they can learn. But education is just the key. I just see it every day in the dispensary. Somebody will come in and they're very shy, and it's an elderly lady. They've chronic pain their whole life, and they've been told this is wrong their whole life. And if you can break it down very simple and just go through things with them and just talk and be patient with them, it's amazing. And I'm so lucky that I'm there, that I get to see it. Because they'll come back weeks later and say, wow, I cannot believe this helped me. I'm going to tell my neighbor, So I think education, research, and just everybody just have a voice in this industry.
Perfect. Thank you, Brenda. All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll open up to questions.
Thank you all so much. Disclaimer first. I'm in the industry. I'm a producer, grower, and I love what I'm doing, and I hope I will retire eventually from this and not from something else. So I hope this doesn't get me shot. We've heard from researchers, patients, politicians, patient advocates, producers, of course, and we talked about the opportunities and the great outlook that we have, and also the challenges that we have. We have not heard from parents who can't get their kids off the internet because they're stoned and they can't play 10 hours, at once. We have not heard from anybody who had a wife or an uncle or somebody killed by a stoned driver. I'm only saying this to point out that there are not just opportunities. There are risks, there's research out there that is credible. We have to acknowledge that if we want to be credible.
Sure. I think that co-aligns with patient education, right?
Yep.
We need to make sure that these patients, and even if it's a rec product, that they have the education that they know what is or what isn't the limit, right? And especially when it comes to, when you have such wide access, So next, please.
And actually, to your point, I did invite a substance abuse counselor to this panel.
Sure.
But she had a conflict and couldn't make it. But no, we are aware that just like pharmaceutical drugs, there are people who end up finding themselves in a bad place using a substance that was created for good.
Sure.
But that's where our education comes in also, where we have to teach them and go through the process with them. And I always go back to elderly people, but them just coming in and trying a gummy, I try and talk them through that so when they haven't ever had THC and they have that feeling, they don't get afraid. So it's all of us trying to educate them through that process also.
Sure, the onus is on us, John Poss likes to say that, he likes to call it a call to Jesus, and I think that, really that our call to Jesus here is basically, or whoever you may hold in that regard, is really patient education. We really need to educate what this plant can do, and what it can do, and what those limitations are, for sure. So go ahead.
I have kids that are on the video games for 10 hours a day and aren't using cannabis.
Fair enough. Sure, yeah, of course. I mean,
Celebrating ourselves for 2 days, doing everything I love what I'm doing, and this is in many ways the key to life. Look, I'm not paranoid when I'm saying that there are risks.
Yeah.
sure.
No, not at all.
If we build, then we cannot get past the point that people look at us as audience.
Of course, and that's where we need the
Thank you.
research too, because I mean, in pharmaceutical doctor terms, that would be under a comorbid disease, right? So you have a comorbid disease, you're trying to treat it with something. That person would be put into a certain sect and treated differently and recorded differently as well. So there's a lot of things that go along with that. That goes with patient education, then ultimately research. Sorry to interrupt. Okay, here you go.
We're fine. Sorry. Real quick for Brandon, and I just wanted to say that as an educator, I heard that we have to educate the patient, right?
Right.
And you were saying earlier about the patient educating you. What is their favorite product? And so can you say quickly, how do you survey your customers? How do you get that information from them?
We're not doing a great job of it right now. There's been some limitations with the systems that we're using. That's one of the nuts I'm trying to crack. To do it in a more rigorous fashion and a consistent fashion. I would say some of the things we've done differently to solicit patient feedback. We do have, we've retained a medical doctor that does seminars every month for our patients, and we're constantly asking what are the effects, and they'll come back and ask for additional guidance. We're in that weird spot, as people have alluded to, of not being able to answer certain questions in certain ways. That's one of the reasons we retain a medical doctor, to be able to provide the information they're looking for. On the other side, it's, again, it's been very anecdotal, and that's where I'm trying to get into a spot where I can do it in a more rigorous fashion. But our patients come back to us, customers come back to us and provide feedback consistently. Most of our products, before we even put them on the shelf, we send those out to our own internal team and require that they give us feedback as well. So that at least what we're putting on our shelves, we have something to deliver to customers. That we have something other than, oh yeah, this is just the new hot fire. It's, no, this is our internal team has used this. This is what we've heard about it. This is what they say works. This is what they don't like about it. And this is what they like about it. That to me, like I said, what I alluded to earlier is the holy grail of getting to the point where, and I'm getting there, but it's using technology to be able to target and again, use our test results, align those with patient feedback, and to be able to pull them for data. And we're starting to do that through our rewards database and customer database.
My name is Mona Samuelson, and I am Nevada's most dedicated patient advocate. And so when I see panels like this in particular, with our concerns in mind, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you very much, because this is part of the conversation that we really need to have, seeing how the difference between recreational use and medical use really is delineated by education. So thank you so much for taking that in mind. And I look forward to GB Science's online portal, how patients can get involved. Because as we have you all sit up on panels, what we don't remember is that it all started back in the day with just a bunch of hearsay. And some of those people who have that practical information need to be included in the conversations, because as we've raised up and created an industry, we now have an industry that thinks it doesn't have to hear from these specific people because they're trying to up the game and they leave the practical knowledge behind. It isn't just facts, figures, and data. At this point, it's still a lot about the practical knowledge, which we don't have data on. So I want to thank you for having panels like this and considering our issues. And I also want to point out to everybody here that these are some of our favorite people as community patient advocates. These are the people who help us the most. So I hope that you'll all give them an extra round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.